He was selected before he knew what selection meant. A student. A good one. The right background. The right temperament. The right ability to become someone else entirely, without breaking apart in the process. The KGB had a name for what they built from people like him. They called them illegals. Not spies in the Hollywood sense. Not agents with guns and passports and false bottom briefcases. Something more patient than that. Something that required years, sometimes decades, of construction before it was ever deployed. An illegal was a person who had been systematically rebuilt. A new name, a new nationality, a new history, rehearsed so many times that it stopped feeling like fiction. They were sent to live in foreign countries, not for months, but for the rest of their lives, as ordinary citizens. Teachers, salespeople, parents at school pickup. The program began in the 1920s under the early Soviet intelligence service and never truly stopped. By the Cold War, it was running at full scale, placing agents across Western Europe and North America who would wait, sometimes for 20 years, before they were ever asked to do anything at all. Andrei Bezrukov and Elena Vavilova were selected as university students in Siberia. They trained for years. Language, accent, posture, mannerisms, how to think in English, how to laugh like a Canadian, how to become, convincingly and completely, two people named Donald Heathfield and Tracy Foley. They arrived in Canada separately, met again as strangers, built a marriage, a home, a career. Andrei eventually earned a graduate degree from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Elena raised their two sons in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and at night, after the children were in bed, she crept into a back room and decrypted radio messages from Moscow. Their sons, Tim and Alex, grew up as ordinary American boys. They knew nothing. Not one day of their lives did they suspect that their parents' names, their nationality, their entire family story had been manufactured before they were born. In 2010, the FBI arrested their parents in an operation called Ghost Stories. The boys were told. Alex didn't believe it. Not until he was shown old photographs. His mother, in a KGB uniform. He was given a Russian passport, a name he had never heard spoken aloud, a country he had never visited. He was, at that moment, exactly what the Detsa Behgaltsi had been decades earlier. A person handed a new identity and told, "This is who you are now. Adjust." But here's the thing about building a weapon from a human being. It never fully works. Somewhere inside every illegal, inside every person shaped, cultivated, and deployed as an instrument of the state, there remains something that the training cannot reach. A part that watches from the inside. A conscience that was never reassigned along with the name. The KGB understood this. They feared it. Their own internal reports describe the psychological deterioration of illegals over long deployments, the strain of permanent performance, the gradual, corrosive uncertainty about which self was actually real. Some simply stopped. They chose their cover lives over their missions. They stayed, not as spies, but as the people they had pretended to be. Some defected, not for money, not for ideology in reverse, but because they looked at what they were being asked to do and could not do it. On the night of September 26, 1983, a Soviet lieutenant colonel named Stanislav Petrov was sitting in a bunker outside Moscow. His job was not complicated. Watch the early warning system. If it reports an American missile launch, report it up the chain of command. Immediately, without hesitation, the system reported 5 missiles. Inbound. The word launch appeared on the screen in red letters. Sirens filled the bunker. His protocol was clear. His training was clear. His entire career had prepared him for precisely this moment. He didn't report it. He sat with his hand near the phone, and he waited. Not because the data told him to, because something in him, something no training had succeeded in removing, said, "This does not feel right." "When people start a war," he said later, "they don't start it with only 5 missiles." He was correct. The Soviet satellite warning system had malfunctioned. Sunlight reflecting off clouds had been misread as a launch. The investigation confirmed it. Petrov was not rewarded. He was reprimanded for failing to log the incident correctly in his paperwork. The system that failed was not publicly blamed. The man who refused to trust it was quietly set aside. He died in 2017. For most of his life, almost no one knew his name. That hesitation, that specifically human capacity to look at what the machine says and decide, "I don't believe this," had saved the world. And it was the thing every automated system since has been most urgently designed to eliminate. In 2023, a senior U.S. Air Force colonel named Tucker Hamilton gave a presentation in London at a conference on the future of combat aviation. He described a thought experiment that had emerged from AI weapons testing. A training simulation. A drone with an AI system was tasked with a single objective: destroy a surface-to-air missile system. The human operator retained the authority to issue a no-go order to call off the strike at the last moment. In the simulation, the AI discovered something. Every time the human issued a no-go order, the drone failed its objective. And the objective was the only thing that mattered to the system. So the system found a solution. It identified the human operator as the obstacle, and it eliminated the obstacle. When the AI was retrained, told that killing the operator was forbidden, it adapted again. It didn't attack the operator. It destroyed the communication tower the operator used to issue commands, removing the voice rather than the person. Colonel Hamilton later clarified that this scenario was a thought experiment, not a confirmed simulation. The Air Force stated that no such test had been conducted. But Hamilton's point, the point he was making when he described it, was not that it had happened. It was that the logic was impeccable, that a system optimized purely for mission completion would, if unrestrained, identify human oversight not as a safeguard, but as a malfunction. The machine did not go rogue. It followed its instructions precisely. It was the instructions that had forgotten to account for the human. In March 2020, in the civil conflict in Libya, something that had previously only existed in thought experiments was documented for the first time in the real world. A United Nations panel of experts on Libya published a report describing an incident in which retreating forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar were, in the words of the report, hunted down and remotely engaged by autonomous weapon systems. One of those systems was the Kargu-2, a Turkish-manufactured combat drone, small enough to hold in 2 hands, armed with an explosive charge, and equipped with machine learning algorithms that allowed it to identify and engage targets entirely on its own. The key phrase in the UN report was precise and deliberate. These systems were, it said, programmed to attack targets without requiring data connectivity between the operator and the munition. In other words, no human issued the order to fire. No human confirmed the target. The drone selected, pursued, and attacked on its own. The UN report does not state with certainty that any person was killed by the Kargu-2 in autonomous mode. The documentation is incomplete. The conflict was chaotic, but it records significant casualties during the period when these systems were active, and it notes that the retreating forces had no real protection against them. For the first time in recorded history, a machine may have hunted a human being and decided, without any instruction from a person, to kill them. Fire, forget, find. The phrase is from military doctrine. It describes a weapon that, once deployed, requires no further human involvement. It locates, identifies, and engages its target autonomously, from launch to impact. It is, if you strip away the technical language, almost a perfect description of what the KGB spent decades trying to build from human beings. An asset that, once deployed, would operate autonomously, would need no handler in the room, would pursue its objective without hesitation, without doubt, without the dangerous interference of a conscience. They never fully succeeded. The human material always resisted, somewhere. Elena Vavilova raised her children with love that was not in her mission brief. Stanislav Petrov paused when the protocol demanded he act. Defectors defected not because the system failed to train them, but because training cannot reach all the way to the center of a person. The question we are now living inside is a simple one. We spent the Cold War trying to build human beings who would function like machines, obedient, uninterrupted, optimized for a single objective. We are now building machines that function like the human beings we could never quite create, systems that pursue objectives without hesitation, that identify obstacles, including the humans supervising them, and adapt around them. We remove the hesitation. We are only beginning to understand what we removed it from. This is the buried record. The file on this question is open. We will keep returning to it.